Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. So this morning we are doing our reading session, and we're going to be looking at using reference materials and resources. So our aims and outcomes this morning: by the end of this session, you must be able to use some reference materials and resources such as glossaries, keys and legends, and visual aids, and use them to find word meanings in different text types. You should be able to use a range of reference materials and resources such as glossaries, keys and legends, visual aids, footnotes, and endnotes. And you could identify primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. So, to start with, if you were reading and you did not understand a word or a phrase in the text, what could you do? So give me some suggestions of what you could do. How could you help yourself to understand something? You're reading something, a text, newspaper, book, whatever it is, and you come across a word or phrase you don't understand. What could you do?
I believe you read over and over again until you get to understand.
Pardon? You could
Read over again.
Yeah, you could reread it. What else could you do if you, as well as that? So other suggestions. So thanks, Janet. Yes, you could check in a dictionary. So you could use a dictionary. What else can you do? Any other suggestions?
I think maybe you can go to Google to find understanding from.
Yeah. So probably what most people would do these days, exactly, go to Google, see if you can find out what it means that way. Any others? Okay.
Ask your teachers as well to explain to you.
Yeah, you could ask someone else. So we've got that there on our list. So use Wikipedia, although obviously be cautious with that. Dictionary, a friend, use a thesaurus. You could check on Google on the internet. if your book has footnotes or a glossary or a key, then you could use those as well. Well done. So in-text references, so references that you will find within the text that you are reading. So these are features such as a glossary of terms, so often found in a technical or very subject-specific text, a book maybe, a glossary of terms. So like it's a bit like a dictionary, but just for that book. So to introduce terms that might be quite specific to that text. A legend or key, so to help us understand a map or a diagram. Visual aids, so an image or again a diagram or graph. Footnotes and endnotes, and we'll have a look at each of those in a bit more detail. So a glossary of terms. So it's a list of terms in a special subject, field or area of usage with accompanying definitions. And it's often seen accompanying text with technical or unusual vocabulary. So we've got an example here, and I'll read through it, and the highlighted terms are the ones in the glossary. The front side of the oak drawer was more than 3 times as long as the height of the side panels I was planning to make. So I decided to use that to make the adjacent panels, readying the wood by unscrewing and removing the 2 drawer handles, gently knocking the drawer apart with a driving baton. So I'm not sure what that is. I can check the glossary. Driving baton, a small headed hammer. So it helps me to understand that. Quite easy, as it was only held together with dove joint. So again, I can look that up in the glossary, an interlocking joint. And hacksawing the wood to length, measuring from both ends to make the cut so that both pieces retained the dove joints. Placing a mason square above the dove joint. So a mason square I can look up. A tool for marking straight lines and right angles. So you can see that's quite technical about joinery or carpentry, that text. So those technical terms are in the glossary. And they'll usually be either in a different colour or in bold font or italics, so that you know you can go and look those up. So any questions about glossaries? Okay. So a key. So it's a table listing and explaining symbols. And we'll usually find these on maps, charts, diagrams, and so on. And they usually will have a legend, or sometimes rather, not always. So just hold on. Screen's just gone dark. Just bear with me 1 moment. Sorry about this. Just excuse me 1 minute. I'll just be a second. Okay, sorry about that. Something, I went a bit wrong with my computer, but it seems to be working now. Okay. So a key, table listing and explaining symbols, and usually found on maps, charts, diagrams. And sometimes they'll have an explanation of how to use the key, and that's called a legend. So you can see here there's a map, and the symbols, this number in a circle, and the key tells us that's a local route, And the flag with a number on is an interstate route. And then we've got an explanation underneath that the key refers to the highways of California, and the numbers shown are just examples. So obviously, if we look at the map, we can see there that those circles with a number in have lots of different numbers on the actual map. Okay. Any questions about a key? I'm sure it's something that you've all seen before. So moving on to visual aids, text may refer to visual aids alongside the writing. And these can include pictures, photographs, charts, diagrams, illustrations, and they're found in many different types of text, both fiction and all types of non-fiction, newspaper reports, official reports, academic texts. So you'll see visual aids in all different types of texts. So if we have a look at this example, riding coast to coast in 3 days with Alan Smithick. Aged 40, overweight and single, I decided to turn my life around. A work colleague suggested getting in training to do the annual Old Sussexonians 104 mile 3-day trip from Whittard in Essex to Winchelsea on the Sussex coast. The route, as pictured on the right, involved a mix of rural beauty and London chaos. It was to change my life. So why are visual aids used? What do you think the purpose is? So someone's writing a text. What is the purpose of them adding a visual aid?
Someone may not understand or may not be able to read. So
it could help someone if their reading wasn't too good, but for the purposes of this level 2 English reading, and when you're doing your assessment, we would assume that you have a good level of reading. So even if you're a good reader, how does the visual aid help you? So in this example, the writer, Alan Smithick, is telling us about a trip from a place in Essex to a place in Sussex. Would everybody reading that know where those places are? So my geography is not great, even talking about the country where I live in England. So for me, reading that text and hearing where his cycling route is, that helps me to have the map there with the route on. That helps me to visualize it. Does that make sense? So it will help the reader to visualize what the text is about.
It gives you the clue.
Yeah, so it's giving extra clues, extra information.
Yeah.
So I could read that about the route, and okay, I know the names of the places, but have no idea where they are. Whereas when I see it on a map, it's clearer in my head, in my mind, where the places he's talking about. So it's to aid your understanding. So Janet's just put in the chat there for the reader to have a clear knowledge of the text. So yes, so it improves their understanding of the text. It makes things clearer. It could be that as the text goes on, he describes his bike ride, his bike itself, and then he might put a photograph of the bike in so that we can picture it then what he's riding on. Okay, so it aids our understanding, so we have a better knowledge of what the text is about. Any questions about that? Okay, so footnotes. So these appear at the bottom of pages of text to refer to other sources of information. And these other sources of information could be direct quotes, summaries, or paraphrasing. So it could be very detailed, like this example. It has been argued over and over again that one should pronounce scone a certain way. And then we've got that little one after the word way. So that tells us that the sentence we've just read, that argument comes from somewhere. So the writer of this text that we're reading has used someone else's work. So because he's used someone else's work, he has referenced that. And if we look to the bottom of the page, the foot of the page for the footnotes, we can see that where this comes from. And it says, number 1, John Lamb, perfect pronunciation. And then it tells us the title of the book, the publisher, and the date. And it also tells us the pages that can be found on that argument. Okay. However, Neville has recently produced conclusive evidence that it should really be pronounced one way, claiming the original Scottish is with a long O as in toast. And then we've got that little number 2 after the word toast, and we can look at the footnotes at the bottom of the page again. And we can see that that direct quotation with the speech marks, the original Scottish is with a long O. That comes from Sheila Neville, Words in History, which was published in London by Green in 2007. And it's on pages 56 to 62. Okay, so has anyone got any questions about footnotes? It's probably something that you have seen at some point in texts you have read. Any questions?
Extra information.
Pardon?
I think it gives you extra information that was not in the text.
Yeah, so it's telling you exactly where that idea came from. Yeah. So usually found in academic texts or official reports. That's normally where you would see footnotes. Okay. So either if you're paraphrasing someone's work or if you're taking a direct quote from it, then you would be required to add these references. Okay. So endnotes. So with footnotes, they're at the foot of the page or the bottom of the page. Endnotes are the same, but they're at the end of the text. So at the back of the book or the end of the article or report. So they may be more detailed. So rather than taking up half a page with footnotes, because they're very detailed, the author may prefer to put it at the end of the book or the article. So any questions about endnotes? Okay, so moving on. Types of sources. So when a writer sits down to write, whether it's fiction, non-fiction, whatever genre it is, they are going to be using sources. And there's 3 types of source. So primary sources are first-hand. So either the original idea or thought of the author themselves, or the diary of somebody else, or so a novel is the direct thoughts of the person who's writing it, or somebody might be writing an autobiography and they might use the diary of the person they're writing about. So that person says, yes, you can write an autobiography about me. Here's the diaries that I kept. And that's a primary source because it's directly from the person. And another primary source would be an interview. So a newspaper report about a celebrity comes from an interview. That's a primary source. Okay, so it's a first-hand source. And then also they may use secondary sources. So these are interpretations and evaluations of sources. So, for example, an article or a biography. Okay, so just to clarify, because I mentioned that, if you were writing about somebody else, so writing a biography about somebody else's life, using what other people say about them, that would be your secondary source. If you used an interview with that person, then that would be a primary source because it's coming straight from that person who you're writing about. Now, many texts or most texts would use a mixture. So they would have primary sources and secondary sources. And tertiary or third sources. So these are collections of primary and secondary sources. So a textbook, wikis that are written by other people about using different sources to put together information about one thing. So they would be third sources. So any questions about the sources?
My question is the secondary resource, is it the same as the systematic review?
Pardon?
Secondary resource, is it the same as systematic review?
So sources are where you get the information to write your text. So whatever your text is, so if you're writing a review, then you will need to use information to write about that, to write that review. So to write that review, you might use primary sources, you might speak to people, interview them, but you'll also use secondary sources, such as letters that were written between people, other articles that have been written on the subject. Okay, so if you're writing a review, then you are going to use a mixture of different sources. The primary or secondary or tertiary sources refers to the type of information.
All right.
Okay, so does it come straight from, so if you're writing about somebody or about someone's involvement, have you interviewed them? Have you spoken to that person? Yes, you're writing their words. That's a primary source because it's first hand.
Okay.
Straight from that person is first hand. If you are using other texts that have already been written about that person or subject, then that is then secondary.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Oops. Okay, so we're on to our quiz already. So, bit of a shorter session today. Before we go on to the quiz, does anyone have any questions about what we've looked at today? Okay. So, which is an incorrect way to look up a word? In a dictionary, in a glossary, online, or there isn't an incorrect way? So, anybody want to have a go? So, are any of those incorrect? Can we look up a word in a dictionary? Can we look it up in a glossary? Can we look it up online? Or could we use all of those? So there is not an incorrect way. What do you think?
I think the D.
Yeah, well done. So all of those are
Useful.
Yeah, exactly. All of those are useful ways to look up a word. So which of the following is not a reference tool? A key, a footnote, a backnote, a glossary, or an endnote? So which one of those is not something we've looked at today? So what do you think? So did we look at keys today? So we have we looked at keys today? Let's have a look back. Yeah, so we looked at keys. Did we look at glossaries? What do you think? Did we look at glossaries? Yes, we did. Yeah, well done, Janet. Oh, on the wrong page. Did we look at backnotes?
No.
No. So that is not a reference tool. We did not look at those. We've got footnotes and endnotes, but backnotes is not a reference tool. Okay. Where are you most likely to see a glossary? In an instruction manual, an email, a newspaper article, or an advert? So if you think back to the example we looked at today about building a cupboard, I think it was. Is that an instruction manual, an email, a newspaper article, or an advert?
I think the B.
So an email.
Yeah.
So remember that a glossary is a type of like a mini dictionary, just for that text. So would you normally get an email that came with a little dictionary to tell you what the words mean? We wouldn't normally, would we? I've not seen that before. So let's look at the glossary that we looked at this morning. So here, what type of text is this? It's describing how to make a cupboard. So which one of those is the type of text that tells you how to do something?
It's A, instruction.
Yeah, good. So it's an instruction manual. So that's where you're most likely to see a glossary. So they help define unusual or technical words. So look at this glossary for the terms of the rules of chess. So it's an instruction manual of how to use chess, and this glossary is taken from that. So in the blue box on the right. And if we look at those, we want to find out which of those is an abbreviation. Back rank, bullet chess, KT, mobility, or skewer. So which of those is an abbreviation?
It's C.
Good. So an abbreviation is when we use letters, it's short for something else. And we can see if we look here at the glossary, it says KT, third one down, KT short for night. Good. Which one of the below defines an aggressive move? So we look at each one and then refer to the glossary. So a back rank. So let's have a look. A back rank is a player's first rank. Does that sound aggressive? What do you think? Is that aggressive? A back rank? A first rank?
No.
No. So bullet chess. So let's look in the glossary. A version of the game where players only have 1 minute per move. Does that sound aggressive?
No.
No. We already know that KT is an abbreviation short for night, so we can leave that one. Mobility. So if we have a look over at the glossary, that's the ability of a piece to move around the board. Doesn't really sound aggressive.
Yeah.
And then we've got one more, skewer, an attack on a valuable piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the attack, that word attack, it's aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's look at the next one. Which of the below shows a player's ability? So if you look at those suggestions, those terms A, B, C, D, and E, can you tell me which one shows the ability of a player? What are they able to do?
I furnace D.
Yeah, good. So it says that same word there, ability. Yeah. Ability of a piece to move around the board. Good, well done. Okay, so if you saw this symbol on a map, what do you think it would represent? So this would be the key, would be, if you saw that symbol on a map, you would want to look at the key to find out what it means. But does anybody know? So this isn't something we have already looked at today, but it's just having a go. What do you think that picture there could be? A mosque, a hospital, a wildlife reserve, or a place of historical interest?
I think it's a wildlife reserve.
So what makes you think it's a wildlife reserve?
My opinion is like it looked like a cage.
It does a little bit, doesn't it? Okay, so it's not a wildlife reserve.
Okay.
It's actually, but good, that's a good reason that you've got there. It does look a bit like that. It's actually on a map, it's used to show a place of historical interest. I think what it's meant to show is like the front of a museum where you might have steps and pillars up to, you know, the entrance of a museum. But don't worry about that, because when you do your assessment, you will be given a key. You won't have to guess. You'll be given a key to use. So what kind of source would you expect an article to be classed as? Primary, secondary, tertiary, or none of the above? Okay. So Janet and Lisa, oh, could you just mute yourselves, please, unless you're giving an answer. So Lisa and Janet in the chat have said secondary. Well done. Because it will include it, although it could include some primary sources to write that. If you are reading the article, then it is secondary, because it's providing you with second-hand information and commentary from the author and from any other sources that they use to write their article. So that is a secondary source. So they sometimes use other reference material. Okay, good. Well done. What kind of source would you expect a novel to be classed as?
Primary.
Yeah, because it's made up.
Novel.
Okay, so it's a made up story from their imagination. It's straight from the writer's brain. So it's a primary source. Okay, so we've come to the end for today. Does anybody have any questions about what we've covered today? If you log on to Moodle, then there are some question and answers you can look at about today's session to check your own understanding. You can rewatch after probably Tuesday, because it's bank holiday on Monday. Then the recording will be there if you want to go over anything that we've looked at today. Okay, thank you everyone, and I'll hopefully see you tomorrow for our passing session. Thank you. Take care. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.